So let's continue learning about maps. So in the last video, we created an empty map and then added elements to it by using the set method. Remember? However, there is actually another way of populating a new map without having to use the set method. And I prefer that because the set method is a bit cumbersome when there are a lot of values to set. So instead, we can create a new map like this. So I'm going to call this one question, because now we're implementing something like a quiz. So in a very simple way. So new map. And then here we can pass in an array. And this array itself will contain multiple arrays. And in each of these arrays, the first position is going to be the key, and the second position is going to be the value. So let's do that. So let's say question, and then what is the best programming language in the world? So this is basically the first entry of this question map. So before we would have used the set method and then this as the first argument and this as the second. But now we can simply specify this array of arrays in this way. Now, next up, I want to specify the options for the answer, basically. And so I can simply do that by their number. So the first answer is going to be C. So C, the programming language. The second will be Java. And the third will be, of course, what else? JavaScript. Then we need a key for the correct answer. And what do you think the correct answer is? Of course, number 3. And then we can also have like a success message and an error message. And so let's again use the Boolean keys. So true, which is basically when the user is correct, then we can say correct. And maybe some kind of emoji here, like this one. But if it's wrong, so if the answer is false, then try again. All right. And so let's take a look. And that looks correct. Fantastic. So when creating a new map from scratch directly in the code, I actually prefer this way of writing it over the way that we did in the previous lecture. But when we keep adding new elements programmatically using code, then of course the set method is still the way to go. Now, as an aside, does this kind of structure here, so this array of arrays, look kind of similar to you? Well, I hope it does, because this is exactly the same array structure that is returned from calling object.entries. So for example, on the opening hours object. And so you see that there too, we get an array of arrays, where the first element is the key and the second one is the value. And so what this means is that there is an easy way to convert from objects to maps. So let me write that here actually. Convert object to map. And so we can say hours map is a new map. And then simply with object.entries of opening hours. All right. So again, because this structure that results from object.entries is exactly the same as this. So an array of arrays. So indeed, now we have a map here. And so keep this small trick here in mind whenever you need a map when you already have an object. Next up, let's talk about iteration. And iteration is possible on maps because, as we already know, maps are also iterables. And so the for loop is also available for them. And so let's use a for loop actually to now print just these options here to the console. So these three, all right? So as always, I like to start with first saying what we will loop over. And so that's going to be the question map. And so each item of the question will, just like before, contain both the key and the value. And so here I can now directly destructure that into two separate variables. So this is a really, really good use case of destructuring. All right. So just to reiterate, this is exactly the same as we did when we looped over the object. The only difference is that for the object, we needed object.entries right here. And that's just because the object is not an iterable. But then we converted it to an iterable using object.entries. And so then this part here is exactly the same. Okay. Now keep in mind, we only want to print these three. So essentially, we only want to print an element if the key is a number. So let's use what we already know. Type of key equal number. And only then log to the console. So inside here, answer and then the key. So the number for the person then to choose with the correct value, which is going to be the answer option itself. So here we go. Answer 1, 2, 3. And now let's just also log the question itself. So quiz app. And here we want question.get, remember, and then the question key. And so now it is complete with question and answers. Now to get the answer from the user, let's again use a prompt. So answer equal prompt. And let's ask for your answer. And answer. And remember, we need to convert this now to a number, because eventually we will compare this number with the key that we have here. All right. Let's just print it then also. Okay, so here we have the question, and of course the correct answer is number 3. And so here we go. And now we can use the power of the Boolean keys here in order to print either the success message here or the error message, basically. All right. So do you think you can do that on your own? Just take a minute or two and try that on your own right now. So did you manage to do that? Well, let's start by comparing the answer with the correct answer, basically. So that is question dot get correct. And so this is 3, right? And then we can compare that to the answer. So in this case, this was also 3. And so this here would return true, correct? And now since this is true, we can directly plug that into the map. And so this true will then return correct. So that's similar to what we did in the previous video as well. And so again, we are using the power of having Boolean values as keys. And then let's just log that final message to the console. So 3 again. Oh, and something went wrong. But I see that it's just here. It's the name. So this is correct, not correct. So again, 3. And now indeed we get correct. Okay. So this is 3 here. The answer is 3. This is 3. And so this here will be true. And so when we get true from the map, we get this string. Now, something else. And indeed, we get try again. Okay, and with that, we finished this nice little quiz. Now, just to finish here, as a side note, sometimes we also need to convert a map back to an array. So basically to this structure. And we can do that like this. So convert map to array, basically. You can do that by simply building a new array and then unpacking, again using the spread operator, the question map. It's asking us here again. And so then the result is essentially this same data structure, so the array of arrays with which we started. So it's this one here. So in this case, of course, this wouldn't make too much sense, but it's still good to know that sometimes you can convert a map to an array. Let's just preset this here to some value so that it doesn't always bug us here. And by the way, there are also the methods that we had on arrays, which are the entries and also keys and values in case that you need them. Okay, now they give us this weird iterator here. So then, just as I showed you before, you have to spread them and put them in a new array. So like this. But this is not really that important. I just wanted to show you that this exists. And for this, there's actually no need because it's going to be exactly the same as this one. Okay, so these are all the keys and all the values indeed. All right, and that's all I have to show you about maps for now. But now you might be wondering, when should I use maps and when should I use objects? Because they are pretty similar, right? Well, that's what the next lecture is all about. There I will help you to choose between all the data structures, including even arrays and sets.